You know that feeling when you finally get a raise or land a big client, or maybe you just had a really good month, and the first thing your brain does is start mentally spending it? Like before the money even hits your account, you're already thinking about upgrading your car, getting a nicer apartment, maybe finally pulling the trigger on those sneakers you've been eyeing for 6 months. Yeah, that's not a you problem. That's literally how almost every person in this country is wired, and it is quietly destroying any chance most people have of ever building real wealth. Here's the thing though. While you're doing that, while the average person is mentally spending money they haven't even received yet, the millionaire next door is doing something so aggressively boring that it would genuinely disappoint you. And I mean that. If you looked at the actual shopping habits, the actual bank statements, the actual day-to-day purchases of most self-made millionaires, your first reaction wouldn't be, wow, inspiring. It would be, wait, seriously? That's it? And that gap, that massive psychological gap between what we think rich people do with their money and what they actually do, that's exactly what's keeping most people broke. So today, we're going to close that gap. We're going to walk through what millionaires actually buy, why it looks nothing like what you see on Instagram, and what you can start doing with your very next paycheck that quietly puts you on the same track. Let's get into it. Okay, so let's start with the fantasy, because we all have it. Go ahead and picture a millionaire in your head right now. You're probably seeing a guy in a Tesla, maybe a penthouse, watches that cost more than a semester of college, flying business class minimum, probably private if he's really doing it. That's the image we've all been sold. And look, I get it. That image is everywhere. It's on YouTube thumbnails, it's on TikTok, it's on every single "I made my first million" video you've ever clicked on. The flashy lifestyle is the content. The flashy lifestyle gets the views. But here's where it gets uncomfortable. Most of the people living that lifestyle on camera are not millionaires. They are people performing wealth for an audience in exchange for ad revenue and sponsorship deals. And the actual millionaires, the people who quietly have seven figures sitting in investment accounts, they are almost never the ones you're watching because their life doesn't make for good content, because their life is boring, embarrassingly, aggressively, almost offensively boring. The data backs this up in a way that should genuinely shock you. Dr. Thomas Stanley spent decades researching actual millionaire households in America. His book, The Millionaire Next Door, is still one of the most important finance books ever written, and the core finding is almost hilarious. The majority of millionaires in the United States live in middle-class neighborhoods. They drive used cars. They shop at normal grocery stores. They wear watches that cost under $300. They don't look rich. They don't act rich, and that is entirely by design. Stanley found that the average millionaire in his research had a household income of around $130,000, but lived on significantly less than that. They weren't flashy. They were what he called PAWs, prodigious accumulators of wealth. And the defining characteristic of a PAW wasn't income. It wasn't even investment knowledge. It was spending behavior. They just consistently, quietly, almost robotically spent less than they made and put the difference to work. That's the whole secret, and somehow that's the part nobody wants to talk about. So what do they actually buy? The first thing millionaires buy is time, not in a vague, motivational poster way. Literally, specifically, they pay for time. They hire cleaners. They pay for grocery delivery. They pay someone to handle tasks that would otherwise eat into hours they'd rather spend on things that generate income or maintain their mental energy. Now here's the fascinating part about this. They do this while simultaneously refusing to spend money on things that don't return value to them. They'll pay $200 a month for a house cleaner without blinking, but they will clip coupons for cereal. They will drive 10 minutes out of their way to save $8 on gas. They will wear the same pair of khakis for 6 years. That sounds contradictory until you understand the framework they're operating from. Every purchase gets mentally run through a filter. Does this buy me time, freedom, or does it generate more money? If yes, they spend. If it's just for status or comfort or because it looked good on an ad, they pause, they question it, and more often than not, they pass. The second thing millionaires actually buy is assets. And I know, you've heard this before, but stick with me because the way they do it matters. They buy index funds. Boring, unsexy, nobody puts this on a YouTube thumbnail, index funds. Vanguard, Fidelity, a simple S&P 500 fund that they contribute to automatically every single month, whether the market is up or down. No day trading, no crypto moonshots, no getting a hot tip from a friend. Just steady, automatic, consistent investment into something that has averaged roughly 10% annual returns over the last century. Warren Buffett, arguably the greatest investor who has ever lived, has said publicly and repeatedly that for most people, the best investment they can make is a low-cost S&P 500 index fund. Not options, not individual stocks, not real estate flipping, the most boring investment product available. And the reason this works isn't magic, it's math. It's compound interest doing exactly what it's supposed to do when you leave it alone long enough. Here's a number that should sit with you. If a 25-year-old invests $500 a month into an index fund, averaging 10% annual returns, by the time they're 65, they have roughly $2.9 million. Same person spends that $500 on a car payment, a nicer apartment, dinners out, just slightly upgraded lifestyle choices. They retire with nearly nothing. Same income, completely different outcome. The only variable is what they chose to buy. The third thing millionaires buy is boring cars. And this one genuinely fascinates me because it's so counterintuitive. We associate success with cars so deeply in this culture that it's almost involuntary. New job, new car. Bonus hits, upgrade the car. You want to feel successful, you lease something that looks impressive. It's almost a reflex at this point. But the actual data on millionaire car purchases is almost funny. Stanley's research found that the most popular car among millionaires was for many years the Ford F-150, a truck, a normal, common American truck, not a Ferrari, not a Porsche, not even a luxury sedan, a truck you could see in any Home Depot parking lot on a Saturday morning. The second and third most popular vehicles were Toyota and Honda, reliable, affordable, terrible status symbols. And look, yes, some millionaires drive nice cars. Some drive very nice cars. But the key distinction is they buy them. They don't lease them. And they buy them after they've already built wealth, not as a prop to look like they have it. The average car payment in America right now is around $700 a month. $700 a month going to a depreciating asset that loses roughly 20% of its value the second you drive it off the lot. That's $8,400 a year just gone. Not invested, not building anything, just gone. And then there's insurance and maintenance and the quiet psychological weight of knowing you're financing something that's worth less every single day. Millionaires look at that math and they feel physically uncomfortable. The average person looks at that math and then signs the lease anyway because the car is really nice and the monthly payment felt manageable. The fourth thing millionaires buy is health, and this is one of the most underrated, underreported pieces of the whole puzzle. They spend consistently on quality food, they pay for gym memberships and actually use them, they invest in decent sleep, regular doctor visits, mental health support when they need it. Not because they're health nuts necessarily, but because they understand something that most people figure out too late. Getting sick is expensive, and being unhealthy is expensive in ways that are slow enough that you don't notice until they absolutely destroy you. Lost productivity, missed opportunities, medical bills, chronic issues that compound over decades, these things have a real dollar cost. But beyond the money, there's something else happening here. Mental clarity is an asset. Energy is an asset. The ability to think clearly, make good decisions, maintain discipline. These things are not separate from financial success. They are financial success. The millionaire who sleeps 8 hours and exercises regularly is not doing that instead of building wealth. They're doing it because that's part of how they build it. Now, here's where I want to get into something that most finance content completely ignores: the psychology behind why the rest of us don't do these things even when we know we should.
Because here's what's actually crazy. Everything I've just described, none of it is secret information. You could Google all of this. Books have been written about all of it. Podcasts talk about it constantly. And yet, the personal savings rate in America hovers around 3 to 5%. Consumer debt is at record highs. The average American has less than $1,000 in emergency savings. We know what we should do, and we're not doing it. Why? The honest answer is that we are surrounded by a system that is specifically, deliberately, and extraordinarily well-funded to make us spend money we don't have on things we don't need to impress people we don't particularly like. The average American sees between 4,000 and 10,000 ads per day. Each one is crafted by people whose only job is to make you feel like you're missing something and that buying their product will fix that feeling. The pressure to spend is not ambient, it is engineered. And the most insidious part is how it hijacks something real and human, the desire to fit in, the desire to signal success to your community, the desire to feel like you've made it. These are not shallow things. These are deeply human needs, and they're being exploited to take your money every single month. Millionaires, particularly self-made ones, have generally done some version of opting out of that game, not because they don't care what people think, but because at some point they cared more about their actual financial future than they cared about the performance of wealth right now.
And this brings me to one of the most important concepts I want you to walk away with today: the difference between being rich and looking rich. Looking rich is actually pretty affordable. A leased BMW, a nice apartment, a wardrobe with a few designer pieces, some decent vacations posted tastefully on Instagram. Depending on where you live, you can pull off a convincing "I'm doing really well" lifestyle for around $80,000 to $100,000 a year. And plenty of people do exactly that. They look rich, they feel rich, and they have a net worth of basically zero, because every dollar that comes in goes right back out on maintaining the appearance. Being rich is different. Being rich is quiet. Being rich is having $400,000 in an investment account, driving a 4-year-old Honda, wearing the same jacket for 3 winters, and having zero financial anxiety because you know exactly where you stand and you know the number is growing. Being rich is options. Being rich is being able to quit a job you hate, handle an emergency without going into debt, or take 6 months off and not lose everything. Being rich is boring to look at and life-changing to experience. And the brutal truth is that most people will choose looking rich over being rich every single time. Not because they're stupid, but because looking rich gives you immediate social feedback. People respond to it, you feel it right away. Being rich is a long game that requires delayed gratification over years and sometimes decades, and we are neurologically wired for immediate reward. This is not a personal failing, this is biology. But understanding it is the first step to working around it. So what do you actually do with this? Because I don't want this to be one of those videos where you feel vaguely inspired for 20 minutes and then go back to whatever you were doing. I want this to be the video you think about when you're about to make a dumb financial decision. So let's get concrete. The first thing you do is calculate your monthly performance spend. That's the money you're spending specifically because of how it makes you look or feel to other people, rather than because it genuinely improves your life. The upgraded phone you didn't really need, the restaurant you went to because it was a cool spot, the gym that has a really nice lobby but you go twice a month at most. Add it up. Most people are genuinely shocked by that number, and that number is the gap between where you are and where you could be. The second thing you do is automate one investment this week, not next month, this week. Go set up an automatic transfer to an index fund or a retirement account for whatever amount you can currently do without breaking anything. $50, $100, $200. The amount matters less than the habit. You are training your brain to treat investing as a non-negotiable expense, the same way your rent is non-negotiable. Once it's automated, you stop making a decision about it every month, and that means you stop having to win a mental battle against your own impulses every single month. The third thing, and this one is genuinely uncomfortable, is to spend 30 minutes this weekend actually looking at your bank statements from the last 3 months. Not to punish yourself, just to see clearly. Because most of the financial damage in our lives isn't coming from one big bad decision. It's coming from 100 small, almost invisible ones that we never look at directly. The $14 subscription, the $60 takeout habit, the $30 here and $45 there that just sort of disappears. You can't fix what you refuse to see. Here's what I want you to sit with as we wrap this up. The millionaires who built their wealth from nothing didn't have a secret. They didn't have access to some special investment product or insider information or a trust fund they never mentioned. What they had was an almost stubborn refusal to let the world around them define what success was supposed to look like. They decided early, or eventually figured out, that the performance of wealth and the reality of wealth were two completely different things, and that chasing the performance was the thing that made the reality impossible. And the reason their shopping carts look embarrassingly boring is because they made a trade. They traded the immediate feeling of looking successful for the long-term reality of actually being successful. They traded the BMW payment for the index fund contribution. They traded the trendy apartment for the investment account. They traded looking rich right now for being rich eventually. And eventually came. The version of you that makes that trade consistently for 5 years, for 10 years, is unrecognizable from where you are today. Not because you'll be flying private and wearing Rolexes, though maybe someday if that's what you want, but because you will have options, because you will have breathing room, because financial anxiety, the kind that sits in your chest at 2 in the morning when a bill is due and the account is low, that goes away. That specific, quiet, crushing weight goes away. And that's what millionaires are actually buying. Not stuff, peace of mind, options, freedom from the panic. And that is actually worth it. Start this week.